everyone. My name is Roy Ahn. I'm a vice president with NORC at the University of Chicago. We are a research organization that works with a lot of federal agencies, and I work in our public health group. Sherry got snowbound in Chicago, which apparently happens during the winter in Chicago. So I'll be your cruise director for the next 7 minutes of this very introductory presentation on how campaign evaluation is really changing with the advent of social media. So this first slide here, if I can get it to roll. Is that working? No. Okay. It's okay. All right. Basically, I've been told not to click. I think I can actually talk through the first slide without it being up. It used to be that in the health behavior kind of evaluation world, we're very much in terms of broadcast media. You're used to very clearly defining, your exposure as the amount of content or broadcast media that someone has absorbed, and then you look to see if there's some behavior change as a result of that. But with the advent of social media, there seems to be this paradigm shift now where, there it is, where really we're used to just measuring exposure in the traditional role and then seeing how it affects attitudes and beliefs and hope that it leads to some sort of behavior change in terms of outcomes. Now, as those of you that shop on Amazon and other retailers know, there's the exposure part, but then you as an individual are contributing to additional exposure that you're going to get from a retailer or whatnot. So now there's a search component, and then if you're sharing some of these messages with your friends online or whatever, there is like a third component now to thinking about a classic exposure and how that might affect our health attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors. So this is something of a big change in the field, and those of us like at NORC and others are really trying to grapple with, well, okay, how do we make our evaluation more contemporary to reflect this environment? Okay, so typically, when you're doing kind of social media analysis and it's for a particular brand and you want to see how a brand is doing, the fishing rod approach, you just cast your line and you have a very narrow set of keywords. That is very effective. But when you're talking about a topic like tobacco exposure or marijuana or whatever, we often find now that casting a wider net allows you to ask better questions and get better data to do the evaluation. So I'll be reinforcing this theme throughout the next 7 minutes or so. This is a slide that just really talks about how we can think about the types of data we can get from social media and how effective it is. So we think about it in terms of how precise the data are and the level of recall. And I put this slide up because I think every presentation has to have like a 2x2 matrix, so I've now satisfied that criterion. So there you go. To give an example here, this is kind of a busy slide, but one of the Truth Initiative's campaigns, Finish It. This is very high precision, right? You have lots of tweets here that are really relevant to the campaign. Hey Walgreens, stop selling tobacco, and the hashtag Finish It is right there. So that is really good. Contrast that with what else you could get in terms of low precision is you get tweets about Don Draper and and Mad Men that has the same hashtag of Finish It, not relevant. Or you have someone randomly texting their friend or tweeting out to their friend, I'll try to finish it tomorrow. So those just give some examples of how it's important to cast a very wide net when you're talking about social media analysis. We worked on looking at the CDC Tips from Former Smokers campaign. And what I want to point out here is that only 18% of the tweets that we were able to find actually contained the hashtag CDC Tips there. And as you can see, a lot of the people that were tweeting were actually kind of advocacy organizations and others that already work pretty closely with CDC. And so that was kind of interesting to us. And we wondered, well, what conversation were we missing about the Tips from Former Smoker campaigns? And so if you cast a wide net, you'll see that if you're using different terms, like lady with a hole in her throat, that's what people, that's how they really talk about the campaign. And this is the kind of data that you really want to be able to analyze what kind of impact you're having with social media messages. So this slide really just shows that sometimes language, vernacular, getting that right is very important as far as evaluation in the new climate. So traditionally, if we were just to think about kind of the amount of exposure or broadcast media that someone received, we now think about amount, source, content, and diffusion when you think about evaluating these campaigns. And that comes with a lot of extra work and a lot of additional analyses. But we think that that's the right model for moving forward. A really interesting example, there have been three or more major anti-vaping campaigns since 2015. And this slide basically shows that, you know, in the beginning, you had lots of public health folks tweeting about vaping, and you had a minority, really, from the pro-vaping community that were tweeting. By the time you actually, a couple of years later, got to California's campaign and then subsequently Chicago's campaign, the pro-vaping community was dwarfing the conversation about vaping on Twitter. And what's ironic about it is you see that it's only 4% of the users of the pro-vaping community, but they're really loud and they're really active and they create a chamber effect. So this is something, if you're a public health professional, just to note that the disparity between who is active in terms of tweeting as opposed to who's actually doing the tweeting. This graphic right here, which looks like a giant flu virus, is actually just to show, I want to show this to you because this is the pro-vaping community and kind of the networks that they're creating, right? And so it's, again, this echo chamber effect. They're all talking with each other. And then here's public health with its own strands of influence there. And the most notable thing to note is that these are not overlapping. There's not a lot of overlap here. And so if the idea is that the pro-vaping community is sending out particular messages, then and public health is over here, it's really hard to be able to counter those messages. So with 2 minutes left, oh, I'm doing pretty well. Okay, great. Takeaways. What should we focus on? Yeah, is really thinking about the way that social media is changing should absolutely shape the way that we do evaluation in a more thoughtful way. There is a garbage in, garbage out phenomenon. I mean, we at NORC spend a lot of time investing time in kind of machine learning, but just having people that just go through keywords and are really thoughtful about keywords and getting the nuance right so that we get better quality data to do the analysis. So one of the conclusions really is, the analysis is actually really easy, I mean, relatively speaking. It's the data collection and the cleaning and the management that's 90% of the work. So I guess if there's a message here, for at least from my perspective for this panel today, it's really focus on what you're getting in and how you're getting that data in, because in the long run, you'll be able to tell a more accurate, rigorous, and compelling story for your audience down the line. So with that, I will turn it back over.